main session and getting into our session, where we'll be talking about getting more LP pension fund money into tech and innovation, getting startups funded. Some great guests here. So I guess we'll wait for people to join. We'll be starting the panel a bit later, but get yourselves at ease, and as soon as we have all the crowd joining us, we'll open the panel. We were discussing a bit already about funding and seed capital arrangements in the Netherlands, and I think you were also sharing that funding has been a kind of continuous part of your journey. So how's it going currently? I mean, are you still looking for, or are you always? Is it always on your mind, or what's?
I mean, we set out this plan, right, that we would raise 4 funds in 2016, and a little bit too optimistic. So reality is that taken 2.5 years longer than originally planned for, right? But I see now that also larger LPs are opening up for looking at, okay, where in the ecosystem can we have the most impact? Yeah. And I think they then come to us. So I think conversations are definitely easier than the first fund that we raised, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And I think recently we've all seen some numbers. So in the end, the overall money in the sector is increasing. But I think also you had some research recently. It will be nice to touch upon that with the audience. So while you're joining this session, we're pre-discussing a bit until we have everyone joining from the main session. And then we'll also introduce the panel. In the meantime, we're getting comfortable and making sure that we get warmed up. And of course, this is going to be interactive. So there'll be some questions coming your way and asking for your input. But more about that later. So so I saw yesterday also a big sustainable fund launching in the Netherlands, Polestar, I think, if I'm correct, like 100 million. It's quite interesting to see more of these things coming to life. What's the trend you're seeing at the moment? What's the main takeaways on the current situation for you?
I mean, I think you kind of have to have a sector domain focus, right? That becomes more and more clear that can be a competitive edge if you have a venture fund. And let's be honest, like companies without like an ESG policy or some kind of ESG thinking into their business will also not do very well in the future, we believe. So there's a lot of sustainability focus within the funds coming up. And that's exciting because I think in Europe we do actually have quite an opportunity to build very strong companies within the sectors we're already really good at, right? Like agriculture and food and also energy production and so on. So.
Yeah, and I think there's also the numbers are changing, right, compared to 10, 15 years ago. I mean, it's looking very differently. Any view from your side on that?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I really recognize what you say about always being on the fundraise. The funds are increasing in size, but they largely depend until now on private capital from private individuals and from families, and not to forget government. So the governments, not just in the Netherlands, but also in the rest of Europe, governments have played an enormous important role in getting those funds off the ground. And over the 20 years, we've built up that ecosystem. Started with seed capital funds, very young funds, and then later on the later stage funds, and that is now, growing fast in the last few years. So last year, I think the venture capital and growth sector, they have had a fundraising of about $1.5 billion, somewhere in between. So also investments in the Netherlands go up. That's good news. But we are not there yet.
Well, I was about to ask, are you seeing the private market taking over with all this support that it got over the years, or where are we?
You mean the private investment?
Private LPs, like are they, like there's a lot of government initiatives, right?
Yeah.
That was part of bringing it where it is today.
Indeed.
Are we in an inflection point where?
Well, there are always pockets where the government is going to play an important role. At the early stage, at the capital intensive part, the government will have to remain there, but also actually in the larger segments that have been built up. Because if you then, as a government, withdraw, you send a very bad signal to, for example, new investors that you want to enter.
Just a quick interruption to welcome everyone. I think we're about to start soon. We're waiting for a quick signal from the central control room to make sure that we have everyone, all the viewers there. While you're there, enjoy yourself, relax, maybe have a coffee. We will be starting imminently with this great panel, and we'll then deep dive into what it is for pension funds to actually get more into this space of startup, of innovation, technology, etc. So, in the meantime, we're just catching up with checking here whether we.
Horen jullie mij? Horen jullie mij, jongens van de techniek?
We kunnen je horen.
Oké, want dan gaan we beginnen met de chit-chats.
Oh, good.
Oh, nog een keer.
Good stuff. Okay.
Oké,
Chit-chat.
5, 4, 3.
Okay, so by now viewers are coming from the main stage and the main session coming into the group here. We're glad that the show is being performed as it is. It is live, so we saw a small technical glitch, but at the moment I think people are joining this session. So make yourself comfortable. Get easy. We'll wait a few moments just for everyone, give everyone the opportunity to join, and then we'll get started. Already we're doing some chit-chatting here just to warm up on the topic. It's an important topic. So pension funds in all of Europe are getting more and more invested into the tech startup scene and innovation in tech, also linked to a lot of transitions that are ongoing. And Holland is actually not playing its part. Recent research shows, so we'll be diving into it. So why is that? With some key people here around us. We're just talking a bit about funding and how it's an ever or never-ending task of any CEO or also for the government. A lot of things have been done. I think Tjarda, you were saying a bit about how over time things have been built. So what for you, and you've been involved quite a long time in that.
Yeah.
So maybe what is been your experience so far actually?
It has taken a long time to build up the ecosystem, and indeed that is being done in like the last 20 years. So up till now we can say that the whole funding is basically done in venture capital at family offices and private individuals and by governments that have really actively supported all stages of the venture capital chain. So both in the seed capital and in the later stage venture capital, government have played an important role. And that's not just in the Netherlands, that is all over Europe. And we see now that in other countries, the development is really going up steep. So we are growing as a country, the fundraising is going up, investments in the Netherlands are going up, but other countries go faster. And the main issue there is that large institutional investors have not embarked yet on this journey in the Netherlands.
Which we will dive in with pleasure
later on.
Later in the discussion once everyone's joined. So welcome again if you're joining now. We are chit-chatting a bit before starting the full panel. People are making their ways into this session. So once we see that this stabilizes and many people are there, we'll be kicking off the real topics. We have some nice panel guests with us. I'll introduce them in more length a bit later. But Rune, so you've been into the Holland for some time, also being active on the Rockstart. So how do you recognize the evolution of that Tjarda refers to?
Yeah, I mean, we'll be discussing it, right? But definitely from the time we started raising for our first fund, which we embarked on in 2016, until now, fundraising for our third, a lot have actually happened. Because we didn't get an option to pitch at pension funds or larger LPs, and relied very much on a much wider European network. We ended up fundraising from seven countries to get the first fund off the ground. So we were really talking to everyone for smaller tickets. Yeah. And there's been some triggers over the years, I think, that opened up the eagerness to start a conversation.
Cool. Well, so we hear that most people have joined now, so thank you for joining us. Great to have you here. We were just chit-chatting to make sure that everyone could get comfortable and get set for this interesting discussion about pension funds. What, as already elaborated, what we see overall in Europe is a trend where over the last 5, 10, 15 years, investing into the asset class of startups and innovation has become way more mainstream. Returns are pretty solid, even outperforming basic market indicators. And we'll be talking about, okay, what is it that is needed in the Netherlands to make that change? For that, I have some nice panelists, and we'll be going there shortly. I think also what you will be seeing is we'll try to make it interactive. So we'll start in some time with a word cloud. You'll get a question on what you think in one word, what the key bottleneck is to get LPs, being pension funds or insurance companies, into this investing into this sector. So feel free to enter. But let's start with the panel now. Okay. So yes, great to have you here. And as I said, we're going to talk today really about the pension fund. It's from recent research from NVP and Techleap around it. We'll be deep diving into that. And we'll also talk to Rockstart, who have been able to secure quite some funding from a pension fund, and we'll also have APG on the call. I think there's at the same time we have a nice bumper doing a proper introduction of our panel, and then we'll also start the word count or the word cloud that I announced a bit before. I guess let's start it now. Just sticking with the control room. Yes, thank you very much. That's a nice short introduction. We want to really dive into the content. Okay, and I think it's really important to get started with discussion. I think, as I said before, a lot of LP money now. Rune, you run a Rockstart. You've been in the Netherlands for quite some time. I think we discussed some time ago, and you were knocking on many doors trying to get
your door as well.
My door too. Yes, definitely.
For help.
Unfortunately, I didn't have as much money as some LPs, so otherwise I would have chipped in. But so what are the key learnings from that? Because in the end, you succeeded. So what can you describe that to us?
Maybe just for context, I should start from the beginning, right? Because Rockstart is really Dutch. I mean, it was started by Oscar Knipper originally, then Don Ritz, and I'm also Dutch guy, and myself jumped in as the last. And we started out as an accelerator that basically offered support for early stage startups. And we did that for 5 years, where we raised money for private individuals, business angels, only Dutch. And we invested that across different domains. First we started web and mobile, and then we did a energy program and so on and so forth. And we learned from all that basically our ability to continue to support them, we really needed to have a different structure where we could invest together with the market. Now, we had some good successes actually to show for. And when we then started raising the first fund, we went around in the market, and it turned out to be incredibly difficult. The larger LPs who should be playing a role as a cornerstone were actually not willing to have a conversation. So we ended up raising the first fund from 7 different countries. We traveled to almost any big city in Europe, and then found these smaller pots of money, but all individuals or family offices interested in this first fund within agri-food. And I think the learning from the first experience was basically going broadly out to different pension funds with this pitch didn't really work. Actually, we needed to approach them from the angle of what are they looking to invest in. So the different approach we took with the energy fund, and we were introduced to APG at the time, who were also setting up an energy transition fund focused on the Netherlands. And already from the beginning, we were able to sort of scope the focus of the fund. and the thesis of the fund. So it became very attractive for them.
Mm.
So I would say it's a both ways, right? For us as the manager, we have been out and then searching for the right cornerstone very early on for the second fund.
Yeah.
So I think that's the main learning from our point of view. That just knocking doors is probably not going to get the big guys interested.
And what did you exactly? I mean, what was it that they needed, in your view, that that you had to realize along the way?
You mean the pension funds?
Pension funds, yeah. If you talk to them, so what made it that you thought that you could bring value?
Yeah, I think able to bring a pitch on the market intel that actually they were looking to gain, because I think we are looking at everything very early stage, and we basically had a dedicated team to go 5 years before they would be interested in investing. So that whole, the whole pitch around how we could bring that into their organization, and then they could look at deal flow and learn from how the companies were doing for a period of time before making decisions. I think that was the strong point for Rockstart.
Yeah, I guess something other VCs or companies can learn from is to really tap into that knowledge of what are pension funds actually doing, what is their focus, and what is the need they have to actually execute and to be able to invest, right? Yeah.
I think you need to find pension funds that have that specific allocation and a team that is dedicated to really make such an allocation happen, right? Otherwise, it's too big of an organization to really make it a priority for you.
Yeah, and it's a good little link to our next guest also, who is not with us here, but we are very happy that she can make it online, Nienke Vledder. Let us check if we can get her on the camera. Well, while we wait for that, maybe let's go to you, Tjarda. I mean, you're running for the NVP, so the Association for Venture Capital, but also private equity, all kind of firms. So, and you've been in this industry quite long. When you hear Rune's story, you think this is an example of how it's of the current success of the Netherlands, or what's your view on that?
It's a great example, actually, and I'm sure there are lots of lessons learned on both sides. But we also have to be honest that it is a very rare example, and it is a small example. So I think institutional investors that consider investing in venture capital should be aware that there is a lot to choose from. There are also a lot bigger funds. There are also funds with a longer track record. And at different stages. So not only in seed capital, but also in venture capital, in later stage venture capital. So that's the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And for now, this is a great example, but the general picture is different.
Yeah. So what do you think they should realize? I see Nienke is joining, so I'll go to Nienke imminently, but just wrapping up this a quick intro. So I think you shared a bit like maybe this is different, and they should look at certain things. What is the typical sequence that you would expect an institutional investor to look at or get exposed to this asset class? Is it starting with a Rockstart? Is it starting with something else then?
Yeah, now when we get at the next steps, that would be something to turn to. But what important is to realize is that these big pension funds have invested in venture capital 10 years ago, for example, in clean tech, 20 years ago in IT. Those were very early days of venture capital, so they got a bit disappointed by the returns then, to say the least. And these funds have been in their portfolios for 10 to 15 years. So that's all they know. And that's what we need to realize, that by now, things have changed completely. Yeah. So by now, we're looking at a different sector, but they have to look at it again, and they have to get started again. So they have to see returns have improved dramatically. So the venture capital returns are now on par with private equity. They are on par with US venture capital. As you said, they are better than public market returns. So that's the first thing they need to know and get to know again. The second thing is the size of funds have increased dramatically. And that makes these funds investable for large pension funds. That's the second thing they need to know. And the third thing is, of course, that it's not only about making financial returns. These pension funds are looking for ways to make impact, to help develop technologies that will help us to get to, a sustainable economy, to healthy aging, to data security, etc. If we want to be autonomous in Europe in these fields, we need to invest ourselves. So there are many reasons now, not only to make a financial return, but also non-financial impact to get to make a deep dive as an LP in this sector.
Invest in transitions like Nienke is doing. Welcome, Nienke. Great to have you here with us. Digital, but great to have you on board. So you've been actually working also with Rockstart, and also I think you've been the one in the end making sure that it was clear what was needed, etc. So we just heard the story of Rune explaining his lessons learned and the awareness he had to get to I think understand better the needs of specific pension funds or funds that are in that portfolio. Could you shine a bit of light on what for you was key when to start working with Rockstart?
Yes, of course. I think from APG's point of view, the fact that we have now committed 250 million to the energy transition to support the Dutch ecosystem, if you will, in this transition is quite a major step for a typical pension fund, because it's very much out of scope of what the traditional products we deliver do. This is quite new to pension funds in general, not only for APG. And I think once this mandate was launched, and this is, by the way, 100% ABP, so it's not spread across all our clients, but ABP has asked us whether we could put some more effort into the energy transition and the impact in the Dutch market. And when we formed a team, we went into the market, and the reason why we looked at Rockstart is because the fact that their success in being an accelerator, i.e. supporting 10 companies in this instance per annum, so 50 over the life of the investment period, is something that for us is not replicatable internally. So that is one. Two is so we are in the Rockstart Energy Fund, just to make it sure that we all understand where we are, together with another major LP and some informals. The strategic rationale has been that we think that Rockstart is a very important program. So we've roamed the market for the best energy accelerator program in Europe, and we could not find any comparables. Secondly, we believe that if you want to do thematic investing like we do within our mandate, you need to be able to support businesses through the life cycle. So you cannot just do startups, scale-ups, growth capital, buyouts. You need to look at it from a full value chain perspective. So the fact that Rockstart is doing all the early stage startups in our perception and makes them a great platform to invest in. Lastly, the impact on the Dutch economy. So we really want to make our investment also every euro we invest in Rockstart will hopefully have a multiplier of impact on our Dutch ecosystem. And if we grow these companies, they will actually contribute to our local economy. So that's, I think, the third reason why we invested in this platform. The risks we see as a pension fund is that you have to be aware that we have a very sizable fund investment activity within APG on the private side. That's really where we need to make above market returns. And so we are in all major buyout funds globally, and these are typically not first-time funds. So the problem we are faced with internally is to argue that Rockstart, formerly a first-timer in our view, and why we think it's going to be a success. And I think that is where other pension funds are also struggling to get these commitments effectively let's say, embedded in their current mandates is because the risk-return profile is completely different from what the bread and butter is of a typical pension fund. So you need to find the pension funds, like APG in this instance, and Rockstart found us, or the other way around, I don't know. You need to understand that there's actually a place within the pension fund where this product can be delivered.
Yeah.
And that's where we see a lot of potential fundraising, also from direct investments, so not just from funds, but also from direct investments in companies, which we also do. Is that that mindset is not clear. So we are not able overnight to say, okay, yes, we can do that, this type of asset. Our clients monitor us on very long-term mandates.
Yeah.
So that should be your first question to a pension fund, is to say, okay, can you actually deliver? Does it fit your mandate, yes or no?
Yeah, sounds like a good plan. Now you're saying the interesting is that listening to Tjarda, it feels like you're actually almost directly investing or taking a very specific approach. Whereas learning from Tjarda, you can imagine that some pension funds or other institutionals would actually consider more maybe following a larger party with a longer track record. What was the reason for you to directly dive into this in such a specific way?
Well, there are 2 points. I think, rest assured, the reason why we do energy transition is for 2 reasons. One is because this industry is growing rapidly and is supported by a lot of future investments globally, but primarily centered around in Europe at the moment. So there's a great opportunity to make above market returns. Secondly, we want to do more thematic investing. This is a trend within pension funds worldwide. APG is one of the largest pension funds globally. And we see that our clients, so our LPs, the pension funds themselves, and we manage their assets, are increasingly asking for us to invest in specific themes. They think that's a societal impact, but also we believe that there's a premium to be had for companies that contribute to major societal problems.
Okay, clear.
So it's a win-win from our perspective. Yeah.
Yes. So taking that the first quick intro round, I think probably good to at some point ask to get the result of the word cloud that of people that identify which sort of problems are the key problems. Now, Tjarda, back to you. So if you hear Nienke speak about Rockstart, what would you? What's your first takeaway on this? Would you expect pension? Where should it go? Should more pension funds join APG like this? What do you think we should look at primarily?
What I think is indeed these LPs could do 2 things. One thing is, if they get back to investing in venture capital, we should make sure that their first experiences are positive ones. We've learned from the past how long it takes to forget about a disappointment. So I would think that the best way to step in is get started with something you sort of know in terms of size, in terms of returns. And so I would look at the sectors that have a long track record, the ones that we've been able. And on the side, you have to start learning from what Nienke is explaining, the new sectors and the new stages of venture, and dive into this smaller. So I think you have to do both. Yeah. But to put money to work, you certainly also need to get into the later stage part. That's what I would say. And in the Netherlands, so to say, we have, for example, a very successful life sciences sector. Yeah. We talk a lot about deep tech. Life sciences is as deep tech as it can get.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
It is the Dutch sector is really among the largest funds in Europe. It's not always known to everybody, but that is the case. They have the longest track record. So if you start with that, and you do some other things next to that, then you're building, you're leveraging the bigger amounts of money where you can make a return sooner, and you're also exploring the newer parts that certainly need this money.
Yeah, definitely. So, and going to Rune, maybe, so you heard Nienke explain, so a great compliment that they searched
That's
the whole
appreciated.
market and didn't find...
That was nice to hear.
yeah, news for you maybe, but so
Totally.
for you, I mean, hearing all this and with your current experience, next funding round, what would you do differently, or what would you think we should focus on when looking at more funding or getting more funding available?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, and really appreciate the fact that APG actually stepped forward and started looking for an early stage initiative, which is clearly not something that fits really well into their normal buckets and systems, and therefore, of course, also have a certain level of risk. So much respect and appreciation for that. But I also do think it's quite important, because without them stepping forward, I think in this case for our second fund, we were not looking sort of clearly at other cornerstones. It was really APG having this allocation of 250 million, and also really have the ambition to be one of the key players in the Netherlands and Europe to run this early stage accelerator and follow on funding, right? So it's quite important to really get these things established, that pension funds like APG are willing to step forward. And I think that's what they can continue to do. I would say the fact that we didn't raise our agri-food fund with a Dutch cornerstone, or we had the Hoggedenim, but we didn't have the second. The second came from Denmark, the sovereign fund of Denmark, which is very active in investing into venture funds, was simply because also initially we couldn't find that cornerstone party who was willing to co-create the fund. And I think there, as a big pension fund, you actually have a lot of mandate. You can pretty much set out also a thesis that work for your later stage allocation. So by looking at both the very early stages, you start developing deal flow, and you can later then allocate to also later stage fund that really fits within sort of your entire portfolio allocation. So I hope that more are willing to go in to the conversations that we had, because we learned a lot from APG. And the discussions, and I think we became over a year 3 times more professional in the way that we operate, also because of the questioning and the feedback we were getting from them. And of course, that's a risk for a big pension fund, but it really drives, I think, performance on the smaller managers.
You know, and I think the point you make is really important, that the support you get from your home base is so very, very important. If you get out all over Europe and people start asking, but what about your home base? Why are they not there? Then that's a difficult start of a discussion. And given the fact that indeed we have the largest pension funds in the world, that could they're now doing 0.01% in venture capital. So there at that time not that many people actually within pension funds that know about venture capital. But if they do and they support you, that is a tremendous help in getting other investors on board.
So I want to quickly move to the word cloud. So people have been entering some of the words where in central. Very central, we see a orange word, risk aversion. I think we see some things around priorities, risk type, uninformed, we see. So checking in with Nienke, so if, don't know to which extent you can see it, but what is speaking to you in this, and maybe you want to give your thoughts around this?
Am I already with you?
Yeah, you are with us, definitely.
Yeah. I think the risk appetite is definitely something that differs per typical institutional investor, right? So we don't only have pension funds, we also have insurance companies, we have endowment funds. There are many institutional parties that have different, let's say, parameters around risk return. That's primarily driven by regulatory limitations. So for us as a pension fund, we are there as an asset manager. You have to be aware we're not the pension fund. We actually manage the pension benefits of all these Dutch citizens that are looking for a secure pension in the long run. So the risk averseness. So before I joined APG, my thesis was always, dear pension fund, why don't you just do it? Because effectively it is a choice to invest in these risky assets, because really people, venture capital is very risky. These businesses go up and down every day. Rune is saying it too. We have it too. Our portfolio, or my former portfolio, was always fundraising for new capital. That's quite volatile. So my point is that the risk averseness is because we have a certain fiduciary duty to our pension contributors. We need to make sure, also from a regulatory perspective, that we can not guarantee, we cannot do that, but that we can show that we are able in the very long term to generate returns that can actually benefit our pensionados in the Dutch market.
And
And
a
within
quick
those
question
parameters,
there, Nienke, just trying to make sure, because we're using our time well. But I one question, basically, also based on what Rune said. He had a Danish investment before, actually. We see some, so in the Nordics, for example, some different approaches. I think you also previously have shared some views around it. Is there a different approach there? Could you elaborate?
I think in the Nordics, what I typically see, also when I did leverage finance, is that these markets are quite closed from a financing and investment perspective. So I think the way they look at it is that they are more focused on their home markets. They are larger, but I think also culturally. And I think in the Netherlands, we are quite small as an economy. So especially what Rune said about these companies that need to scale, or what Constantijn said, all our new companies need to go abroad very quickly, because the Dutch market is, however you look at it, way too small to build sizable businesses.
Yeah,
So we as a country are much more open as an economy, and we're much more depending on foreign investments than I think the Nordics are.
it's interesting.
So
Yeah. Yeah, so because at the same time, I would not picture Denmark being bigger than the Netherlands, for example, as a market. But I guess you mean Scandinavian probably are more coordinated in that sense.
The Nordics
I
are
just
more.
want to go to make sure, because of time. I think we also have a polling question where we're gonna check in with the audience once more, where we're gonna look at, okay, where do you as an audience see that we should focus our efforts? I think it will be coming up shortly, and as soon as that's the case, I'll return to it. Rune, do you recognize what Nienke says? Is it also your feeling that Holland is more internationally funded, and therefore, other economies are more by themselves, or do you see other reasons why it's different there?
Yeah, it's really a good. I'm probably not the best one to sort of make a high level analysis on the pension fund landscape, but I can share my experience from dealing with the sovereign fund in Denmark, which is partly taxpayer money, but is also partly pension fund money under certain allocations, and it's just become very clear there that they want to be participating in building ecosystem, and thereby basically set out specific teams that only look at venture opportunities and venture deals. So it's very clear where you go, right? When you want to raise for a venture fund. I think that's sometimes a little bit less clear with some of the other pension fund structures here in the Netherlands. Yeah. Like who do you go to, right, to get that conversation started? I think that let alone would probably trigger a lot more interesting co-creation opportunities, where you look at, okay, this thematic approach to our investment fits well with what you're also looking at. Like, is there an opportunity to become a cornerstone in a fund, right? And I think that's what they had, and the willingness to work with us for a couple of years actually to get the first fund off the ground. Yeah. And in the big picture, it's a relatively small allocation, but in the long term, I think in building ecosystems, which I think every country should be somewhat focused on, to see where you're strong and how to double down on that. It really makes a difference. Yeah, that's what we've seen.
I saw the just before I saw the result of the polling, which seems like quite evenly spread around different areas. Like VC should better understand LPs, like referring to the learnings from your side. A large part LPs should include VC asset class into their investment mandate, which I think is a bit alluding to what you said. And then smaller have to move forward a bit. They should prioritize investing in the Dutch innovative tech. It's a mere focus on the local growth, like what Nienke was referring to. And finally, the government should make it clearer what is expected from pension funds, because there's a lot of focus often on returns and safe returns, but investing locally also has its risk. What's not being voted is that we should not leave this topic alone. So I think that's a good topic. On the last note, let me ask you all a quick last call to action or a thing that you learned today, and then we'll wrap it up. Maybe Tjarda, you want to start?
Yeah, so first of all, indeed, never give up. We've been talking about this for many years, but now we have a track record of, more than 10 years. So that makes the sector really investable in terms of returns, in terms of size, in terms of track record.
Okay, time to act. That's very clear. Nienke, from your side?
Yes, I think I would like to use this as an opportunity to say to our colleagues in the market, other pension funds, that yes, it is internally a struggle to get these mandates launched, but it's very much worthwhile, and we're very happy to share our experience within APG to convince other pension funds to join us in this very attractive asset class. And I'm not only talking about the startup scene, but indeed also the growth phase thereafter. Yeah.
Okay, very clear. Rune, from your side?
Final words to other pension funds: go talk to APG, I would say.
learn from each other.
I think that's a clear point. Let's not focus on the bottlenecks, but learn from each other and collaborate given the outcome. And sorry we didn't have a chance to deep dive into the viewer questions. I apologize. We'll follow that up after, and we're going back to the main session. Thank you very much.